The bedroom door stood half open, and through it, Naomi could see her husband's bare back moving rhythmically against someone who was definitely not her. The woman's red nails dug into Richard's shoulders, her face thrown back in pleasure. Naomi's hands went numb, and the groceries she'd been carrying crashed to the hardwood floor. The sound echoed through their 7,000-square-foot mansion like a gunshot. Richard's head snapped around. For a moment, nobody moved. The woman, Simone, Richard's assistant of 3 years, scrambled to cover herself with the sheets that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Richard didn't bother with shame. He simply reached for his robe, his face settling into an expression Naomi had never seen before. Cold calculation mixed with something close to relief. "Naomi," he said, his voice steady. "We need to talk." She stood frozen in the doorway, her mind cataloging details it didn't want to remember. The perfume that wasn't hers lingering in the air. The way Simone's clothing was scattered across the floor, mixing with Richard's expensive suits. The half-empty wine glasses on the nightstand, the same crystal she'd picked out for their 10th anniversary. How long? The words came out steadier than she felt. Richard tied his robe and walked toward her with the confidence of a man who'd already decided how this scene would play out. "Does it matter? Naomi, let's be honest. We've been over for years. We just kept up appearances for..." He waved his hand vaguely. "For Julian?" Naomi's voice cracked on their son's name. "For our 8-year-old son. Julian will be fine. Kids are resilient." Richard moved past her into the hallway, expecting her to follow. She did, her feet carrying her automatically while her brain tried to catch up with this new reality. "I want a divorce, Naomi. A clean break. I'll make this simple for you." They stood in the living room now, surrounded by the trappings of their wealth. The original artwork on the walls. The imported furniture. The view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows that Richard had insisted they needed. Simone appeared at the top of the stairs, now dressed, her eyes avoiding Naomi's. "Simple?" Naomi heard herself laugh, a sound that didn't quite belong to her. "You're sleeping with your assistant in our bed and you want to make this simple?" "I want the house," Richard said as if she hadn't spoken. He started counting on his fingers like he was listing grocery items. "The cars. The vacation properties in Aspen and Miami. The boat. The investment accounts. The business assets." Naomi felt the room tilt slightly. "Everything. Everything except Julian." Richard's face hardened. "I'm being generous, Naomi. You can have full custody. I don't have time to be a single father. I'll pay the minimum child support required by law, of course. But the rest? It's mine. I built this empire." "We built it," Naomi said quietly. "I gave up my career. I managed your schedule, entertained your clients, raised your son. My lawyers will argue otherwise." Richard pulled out his phone, already moving on to his next task. "I suggest you get a lawyer too. A good one. Though I should warn you, Harrison Blake is the best in the state, and he's already on retainer for me." Simone had made her way down the stairs and now stood beside Richard, her hands sliding possessively around his arm. The gesture was deliberate, meant to hurt. It worked, but not in the way they probably thought. Naomi felt something crack open inside her, but it wasn't her heart breaking. It was something else. Something colder and sharper. "I want you out by the end of the week," Richard continued. "You can take your personal belongings. Everything else stays. I'll have Harrison draw up the papers." Just like that. Naomi looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered when the man she'd married had been replaced by this stranger. Or maybe he'd always been this person and she'd simply refused to see it. Just like that. Richard checked his phone again. "I have a meeting in an hour. Simone, let's go." They left her standing there, surrounded by the ruins of her life. The front door closed with a soft click that sounded final. Naomi walked slowly to the couch and sat down, her mind strangely clear despite the chaos. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she pulled out her own phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she needed. Patricia Morrison, the lawyer she'd consulted 6 months ago. 6 months ago, when she'd first discovered the charges to hotels she'd never visited on their credit card statement. 6 months ago, when she'd started preparing for this exact moment. "Patricia," Naomi said when the lawyer answered. "It's Naomi Brooks. It's time." The next 3 hours passed in a blur of phone calls and arrangements. Patricia arrived at the house within 90 minutes, her briefcase in hand and her expression grim. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Naomi had served countless family dinners, and Patricia laid out Naomi's options. "You have grounds for fault divorce," Patricia said, spreading papers across the granite countertop. "Adultery is clear-cut here. We can fight for everything. The prenup you signed was poorly written. I can break it. We can take him for at least 60% of everything. Naomi traced her finger along the edge of the table. What if I don't want to fight? Patricia's pen stopped moving. Excuse me? What if I let him have everything he's asking for? Naomi, we're talking about millions of dollars. Properties. Investments. You'd be walking away from your entire life. Would I? Naomi looked up, and Patricia saw something in her eyes that made the lawyer sit back. Or would I be walking away from his life and finally starting mine? I don't understand. You will. Naomi pulled out a folder from her purse, one she'd been building for 6 months. I need you to do exactly as I say. Let Richard think he's winning. Let him take everything he wants. But I need you to make sure certain documents are in order first. Patricia opened the folder and began to read. Her eyes widened as she flipped through page after page of property assessments, financial statements, and legal documents. Naomi, this is necessary. Naomi's voice was calm, almost peaceful. Richard thinks wealth is about what you can see. The big house. The expensive cars. The impressive portfolio. He never understood that real wealth is about what you know. And I know everything. That night, after Patricia left with instructions that made the lawyer's head spin, Naomi went to Julian's room. Her son was asleep, his small body curled around his favorite stuffed elephant. She sat on the edge of his bed and smoothed his dark curls back from his forehead. It's going to be okay, baby, she whispered. Mommy's going to make sure of it. Julian stirred but didn't wake. Naomi stayed there for a long time, watching him sleep, letting herself feel the pain she'd been holding back. But along with the pain came something else. Determination. Clarity. Purpose. Richard thought he'd won by taking everything. What he didn't know was that Naomi had already decided what everything really meant. And it wasn't the house or the cars or the accounts he was so eager to claim. Everything meant freedom. Everything meant a future built on truth instead of appearances. Everything meant Julian growing up watching his mother refuse to be destroyed by betrayal. And everything, Naomi thought with a small smile, meant watching Richard discover exactly what he'd really taken in this divorce. She kissed Julian's forehead and stood up. Tomorrow the real work would begin. But tonight she allowed herself this moment of quiet before the storm. Because she knew something Richard didn't. The best revenge wasn't fought in courtrooms or screaming matches. The best revenge was served cold, calculated, and completely legal. And Naomi had just put the first pieces in place. Patricia Morrison's law office occupied the 15th floor of a building downtown, far enough from Richard's usual haunts that Naomi could come and go without being noticed. She sat across from Patricia 3 days after the confrontation, wearing a bright blue blazer that brought out the warm tones in her brown skin. She'd learned long ago that colors mattered. Black was for funerals and defeat. Blue was for strategy and calm. He's already filed, Patricia said, sliding the divorce petition across her desk. Harrison Blake moved fast. They're asking for everything you said they would. The house, vehicles, investment properties, business accounts, even the art collection. Naomi scanned the document without emotion. And Julian? Full custody to you. Minimum child support. Richard's essentially buying his way out of fatherhood. Patricia's disgust was evident in her voice. Naomi, I have to ask again. Are you absolutely sure about this approach? We can fight. I've won cases with far less evidence than what you've given me. I'm sure. Naomi set down the papers and pulled out her laptop. Let me show you something. She opened a spreadsheet that would have made any financial analyst proud. Columns of numbers, property addresses, account numbers, all color-coded and cross-referenced. Patricia leaned forward, her lawyer's mind already working through the implications. This is every asset Richard is asking for, Naomi explained, her finger tracking down the screen. The house on Willow Creek Drive. Purchased 8 years ago for $2.3 million. Current market value appears to be around $4 million. Appears to be? The foundation has been sinking for the past 2 years. I had it inspected by 3 separate engineers under the guise of routine maintenance. All 3 reports say the same thing. Full foundation replacement needed. Cost estimate, $1.8 million minimum. But I never filed those reports with the city, so there's no public record. The house looks perfect from the outside. Patricia's eyes widened. That's legal, Naomi finished. I own half that house. I'm entitled to not report issues if I choose. Richard never asked for inspection reports. He just assumed everything was fine because it looked fine. What about the vacation properties? Naomi clicked to another tab. The Aspen condo has a lawsuit pending from the HOA for unpaid fees and violations I racked up over the past year. I stopped paying the HOA dues 6 months ago. The fees have accumulated to about $60,000, plus legal costs. The Miami property is in a flood zone that just got reclassified. Insurance costs are about to triple, and there are new building codes requiring expensive retrofits. The cars? Leases mostly, not purchases. But I structured them through a business account with balloon payments coming due in 3 months. About $300,000 total. Richard thinks they're paid off because I handled all the paperwork. Patricia sat back in her chair, a smile slowly spreading across her face. You separated all the assets from their liabilities. Every single one. Naomi clicked through more tabs. The boat has engine problems that will cost $60,000 to fix. The investment accounts he wants are actually margin accounts with large amounts borrowed against them. He'll owe more than they're worth when the margin calls come due. I've been careful to make everything look profitable on the surface. How long have you been planning this? Naomi closed her laptop. Remember 6 months ago when I came to you for that initial consultation? I told you I'd found hotel charges on our credit card. That was my first clue. But I'm a financial analyst, Patricia. Or I was before I gave it up to be Richard's perfect wife. So I started digging. She pulled out another folder, this one thicker than the first. Bank statements going back 3 years. I found a pattern. Regular withdrawals. Gifts I never received. Restaurant charges for 2 when he claimed to be working late. So I hired a private investigator. The photos were explicit. I'm sorry, Naomi. Don't be. Those photos gave me clarity. I realized my marriage was over one way or another. So I had 2 choices, let it destroy me or prepare for what was coming. Naomi's voice was steady, matter-of-fact. I chose preparation. Patricia flipped through the documentation, shaking her head in amazement. This is brilliant. Ruthless but brilliant. I prefer to think of it as fair, Naomi said. Richard wants everything that looks valuable. He's getting exactly what he asked for. I never lied about any of it. I just didn't volunteer information he never asked for. What about your assets? Your real assets? Naomi's smile was small but genuine. A year ago, I opened a consulting company under my maiden name, Naomi Laurent Financial Consulting. I started taking on clients quietly, doing the work I used to love before Richard convinced me to give it up. The company is registered in Julian's trust, completely separate from any marital assets. Richard doesn't even know it exists. She pulled up another spreadsheet. In 12 months, I've built a client base of 15 companies. My revenue last quarter was $400,000. Projected revenue for next year, $2.3 million. All legally mine, earned through my own work, completely separate from anything Richard can claim in the divorce. Patricia let out a low whistle. You've been busy. I've been focused. Naomi closed her laptop again. Richard thinks wealth is about ownership. But real wealth is about income and opportunity. He can have the fancy house with the broken foundation. I'll take my skills and my ability to earn. In 5 years, I'll be wealthier than we ever were together, and I'll have done it on my own terms. There's still the matter of negotiation, Patricia said. Harrison Blake will want to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Let him. Naomi stood up, gathering her materials. Every document is in order. Every asset is exactly as described in the paperwork. I've been meticulous about that. Richard wants the house? The paperwork shows he's getting a $4 million property. The fact that it needs $1.8 million in foundation work isn't my problem to disclose. He's a grown man making his own decisions. Patricia walked her to the door. One more question. What about Simone? She's moving into that house with Richard. For the first time, Naomi's composure cracked slightly, a flash of something dark crossing her face. Simone made her choice. She wanted the wealthy lifestyle, the big house, the man with money. She's getting exactly what she wanted too. I hope she enjoys it. You're not worried about her warning Richard? Simone knows even less than Richard does. She sees the surface, the expensive address, the luxury cars, the vacation homes. She has no idea how any of it actually works financially. By the time either of them figures it out, the divorce will be final and legally binding. Naomi paused at the door. Patricia, I need you to understand something. This isn't about being vindictive. This is about protecting my son and myself. Richard chose to betray our marriage. He chose to discard me like I was worthless. He chose to be greedy. I'm simply letting him have exactly what his greed chose. And if he tries to come back when he realizes? He won't have anything to come back with. Naomi's voice was quiet but certain. And even if he did, I'd never take him back. That door is closed forever. I'm building a new life now. A real one. One where I'm valued for who I am, not what I can do for someone else's image. After leaving Patricia's office, Naomi drove to Julian's school. She was early for pickup, so she sat in her car and watched children play on the playground through the fence. Julian was easy to spot, his bright green shirt visible as he climbed on the jungle gym with his friends. Her phone buzzed. A text from Beverly Grant, her best friend since college. Heard about Richard. Are you okay? Call me. Naomi typed back, I'm better than okay. I'm free. Come over tonight. Beverly's response was immediate, already planning to. Bringing wine and ice cream. Make it sparkling water, Naomi replied. I need a clear head these days. She watched Julian laugh at something his friend said, his whole face lighting up with joy. He didn't know yet. She'd tell him tonight in simple terms he could understand. Mommy and Daddy weren't going to live together anymore. But he was loved, so very loved, and nothing about that would ever change. The school bell rang and children poured out of the building. Julian spotted her car and ran over, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He climbed into the back seat, chattering about his day, about the art project he'd made, about the new game they'd learned in gym class. Mom, can we get pizza tonight? He asked as she pulled out of the parking lot. Actually, honey, we need to talk about something. How about we get your favorite chicken and then have a conversation? Julian's smile faded slightly. At 8, he was perceptive enough to know when something was wrong. Is everything okay? Everything is going to be okay, Naomi said, catching his eyes in the rearview mirror. I promise you that. Things are going to change, but change can be good. You'll see. She meant it. With every fiber of her being, she meant it. Richard had tried to take everything. What he didn't realize was that he'd actually set her free to build something better. Something real. Something that couldn't be bought or sold or signed away in a divorce settlement. He'd taken the prison and left her the key. And Naomi intended to walk through that door and never look back. The conference room at Harrison Blake's law firm was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the mahogany table could seat 20 people comfortably. Today it held only 6, Richard and his lawyer Harrison on one side, Naomi and Patricia on the other, with a mediator and a court reporter at the ends. Naomi wore a bright red dress, fitted and professional. She'd chosen it deliberately. Red for power. Red for the life she was stepping into. Richard's eyes flickered over her appearance with something that might have been regret, but it passed quickly. Shall we begin? Harrison Blake was exactly what Naomi had expected. Silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He slid a thick stack of papers across the table. We've prepared the settlement agreement as discussed. Mrs. Brooks gets full custody of the minor child, Julian Brooks. Mr. Brooks retains all real property, vehicles, investment accounts, and business assets acquired during the marriage. Patricia made a show of reviewing each page carefully, though she and Naomi had already gone through everything in detail. The house on Willow Creek Drive, assessed value $4.1 million. The vacation properties in Aspen and Miami. The 2024 Mercedes, the 2024 Range Rover, and the 2023 Porsche. The yacht. The investment portfolio currently valued at approximately $3.2 million. The art collection. Business interests in Brooks Development Corporation. That's correct, Harrison said smoothly. In exchange, Mrs. Brooks will receive child support in the amount of $1,500 per month until Julian reaches age 18, plus coverage of 50% of medical expenses not covered by insurance. Minimum state requirement, Patricia noted, her voice neutral. My client is being generous with custody, Harrison countered. He's giving Mrs. Brooks full parental rights and decision-making authority. Naomi almost laughed. Richard was giving her full custody because he didn't want to be bothered with actual parenting. But she kept her face carefully blank. There's also the matter of spousal support, Patricia said. Mrs. Brooks gave up her career to support Mr. Brooks's business endeavors. Mrs. Brooks has a master's degree in finance, Harrison said. She's perfectly capable of supporting herself. My client is offering a one-time payment of $50,000 in lieu of any spousal support claims. That's insulting, Patricia said. It's fair, Richard spoke for the first time, his voice cold. Naomi can get a job like everyone else. I'm keeping the assets because I earned them. Naomi met his eyes across the table. We earned them, Richard. Together. Agree to disagree. He leaned back in his chair, the picture of confidence. Are we doing this or not? I have plans this afternoon. Plans with Simone, no doubt. Naomi had seen the woman's social media posts, already tagging herself at the Willow Creek house, already posting photos of the cars, the yacht, living the life she'd stolen. My client will accept the terms, Naomi said quietly, and Patricia's head whipped toward her. Naomi, we should discuss. I've made my decision. Naomi picked up the pen Harrison had placed in front of her. I'm signing. The room went silent. Harrison Blake's smile widened. Richard's shoulders relaxed. Even the mediator looked surprised. You're certain? The mediator asked. You understand that by signing this agreement, you're waiving your rights to any claims on the marital property? I understand completely. Naomi began initialing each page, her signature neat and controlled. I'm taking custody of my son and walking away from everything else. That's my choice. Patricia tried one more time. Naomi, please. Let's at least negotiate the spousal support. You're entitled to more than. I'm entitled to peace, Naomi said, still signing. I'm entitled to a fresh start. And that's what I'm taking. She signed the final page with a flourish and slid the papers back across the table. Harrison gathered them up quickly, as if afraid she might change her mind. Richard signed his own set of papers with barely a glance, then stood up. Pleasure doing business with you, Naomi, he said, extending his hand. She looked at his hand and then at his face. This isn't business, Richard. This is the end of our marriage. There's nothing pleasurable about it. He withdrew his hand, shrugging. Suit yourself. Harrison, when can we make this final? We'll file today. With the 10-day waiting period, you'll be officially divorced in 2 weeks. Perfect. Richard checked his phone. Simone's having a designer come look at the house tomorrow. We're redoing the master bedroom. The casual cruelty of it hit Naomi square in the chest, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she gathered her purse and stood. Then I'll be out by this evening. I've already arranged for movers. You're moving today? Patricia asked. No reason to delay. Naomi headed for the door, then paused. Richard, I hope you get everything you deserve from this divorce. I truly do. He missed the double meaning completely, already back on his phone. Harrison Blake, however, watched her leave with a frown. For just a moment he'd seen something in Naomi's eyes that made him uneasy. But Richard was his client, and the papers were signed. Whatever concerns he had, he pushed them aside. Outside the building, Patricia caught up with Naomi on the sidewalk. Are you really okay with this? I'm better than okay. Naomi pulled out her own phone and showed Patricia a text message. My consulting company just landed our biggest client yet. A tech startup that needs complete financial restructuring. It's a 6-month contract worth $300,000. That's amazing, but Naomi, you just gave up millions. I gave up the appearance of millions. Naomi started walking toward her car, a modest sedan she'd purchased 6 months ago in her maiden name. Patricia, do you know what the difference is between looking rich and being rich? Tell me. Looking rich is about assets you own. Being rich is about income you generate. Richard took all the assets. Assets that will cost him more than they're worth. But I kept my ability to earn, my skills, my reputation in the industry. In 5 years I'll have generated more real wealth than Richard ever had, and it will all be mine. Patricia shook her head in admiration. You're scary, you know that? I prefer thorough. Naomi unlocked her car. Come by tomorrow? I want you to meet my new landlord. I think you'll like her. Where are you moving? A 3-bedroom apartment in the Riverside complex. It's bright, it's safe, it has a great school district for Julian. The rent is reasonable and it's all mine. No hidden foundation issues. No balloon payments. Just a simple, honest life. She drove away from the law office and headed to Julian's school. He'd been staying with Beverly for the past 3 days while Naomi made arrangements. Tonight, they'd sleep in their new apartment, start their new life. The movers were already at the Willow Creek house when she arrived, loading boxes she'd packed over the past 3 days. She'd taken only what was truly hers. Her clothes, her books, Julian's belongings, some photos from before the marriage. Everything else she left for Richard and Simone. She walked through the house one last time, this mansion that had been her prison for 8 years. The living room where she'd entertained Richard's clients. The kitchen where she'd cooked elaborate dinners to impress people who didn't matter. The bedroom where she'd caught Richard with Simone. In Julian's soon-to-be former room, she found a drawing he'd made last week. A picture of their family, stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. Julian had drawn himself in the middle, holding both parents' hands. She carefully folded the drawing and put it in her purse. Mrs. Brooks? One of the movers appeared in the doorway. That's the last of it. We're heading to the new address now. Thank you. She took one final look around, then walked out without a backward glance. At the apartment, Beverly was waiting with Julian. The moment Naomi walked through the door, Julian ran to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Is this really our new home, Mom? He asked, looking around the space. It was smaller than what he was used to, but the living room had big windows that let in afternoon sunlight, and there was a small balcony overlooking a park. This is really ours, Naomi confirmed, kneeling down to his level. What do you think? Julian considered this seriously. Can I paint my room blue? Any color you want, sweetheart. Then I like it. He hugged her again, then ran off to explore. Beverly handed Naomi a glass of sparkling water. To new beginnings? To new beginnings, Naomi agreed, clinking glasses. And to Richard finally getting exactly what he deserves. When do you think he'll figure it out? Naomi smiled. Give it about 3 months. That's when the first balloon payment comes due on the cars. Then the fun really begins. They watched Julian discover the balcony, his delighted laugh floating back to them. Naomi felt something settle in her chest. Real, genuine peace. She'd signed away everything Richard wanted. But in doing so, she'd signed herself into freedom. And that, she thought, was worth more than all the mansions in the world. 3 months passed like a new chapter in Naomi's life. The apartment became home. Julian thrived in his new school, made new friends, and seemed happier than he'd been in years. Naomi's consulting business exploded beyond her projections. Word spread about her skills, and clients came to her through referrals, through her growing reputation, through her results. She was in her home office, reviewing a financial plan for a new client, when Beverly called. You need to see this, Beverly said, her voice crackling with barely contained laughter. See what? Richard's LinkedIn. He just posted an update. You're going to love it. Naomi opened her laptop and navigated to Richard's profile. The post was there, public for everyone to see. Exciting changes ahead. Looking forward to new opportunities and fresh starts in business and life. That's corporate speak for, I'm in trouble, Beverly said. I did some digging. Want to hear what I found? Tell me. The Brooks Development Corporation just lost its 3 biggest clients. Apparently, when Richard tried to close a deal last week, the client asked about his assets. Richard bragged about the properties, the cars, everything. The client did their due diligence and found the HOA lawsuit on the Aspen property. They pulled out of the deal. Naomi felt a small smile form. Interesting. That's not all. Remember those margin accounts you mentioned? The ones Richard thought were pure profit. I remember. Margin call came through 2 weeks ago. Richard had to liquidate most of the portfolio just to cover the debt. He lost about 70% of what he thought he had. How did you find all this out? Beverly laughed. I have a friend who works at his bank. Let's just say the gossip is spreading. Richard's been in there 3 times this month, looking increasingly desperate. But wait, there's more. I'm listening. The Mercedes? Repossessed last week. The balloon payment came due and Richard didn't have the cash to cover it. He tried to refinance, but his credits shot because of all the debts you so carefully arranged for him to inherit. Naomi should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt oddly detached, as if all of this was happening to a stranger. What about the house? That's the best part. The city inspector finally did a routine check, and guess what they found? Foundation issues. They've red-tagged the property until Richard gets it fixed. The repair company gave him an estimate, $1.9 million. Higher than I thought it would be. Inflation's been rough, Beverly said dryly. But here's where it gets really good. Simone left him. That got Naomi's attention. When? Last week. According to my sources, she'd been getting increasingly nervous about the financial problems. When the car got repossessed and she had to take an Uber to her nail appointment, that was the final straw. She moved out and is apparently dating some investment banker now. Naomi closed her laptop. How's Richard handling it? Not well. He showed up at my office yesterday, actually. Looking for you. What? Don't worry, I didn't tell him anything. But Naomi, he looked bad. Tired. Stressed. He asked if I knew where you were living. I told him I'd pass along the message that he was looking for you. What message? He said, and I quote, tell her I need to talk to her. It's important. Beverly paused. Are you going to respond? No. The answer came quickly, decisively. Whatever Richard needs, it's not my problem anymore. We're divorced. We communicate only about Julian, and even that goes through the parenting app the court ordered. He tried calling you? Blocked his number months ago. He can email through the app if it's about Julian. Otherwise, I have nothing to say to him. After hanging up with Beverly, Naomi sat in her home office, looking out at the park below. Children played on the swings. Couples walked dogs. Normal people living normal lives. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Her phone rang again. Patricia this time. I just got a very interesting call, the lawyer said. From Harrison Blake. Richard's lawyer? What did he want? He wanted to know if there was any way to appeal the divorce settlement. Specifically, he wanted to know if his client could claim fraud or misrepresentation about the assets. Naomi's heart rate picked up slightly, but her voice remained calm. What did you tell him? The truth. That every asset was represented accurately in the paperwork. The house was assessed at market value. The investment accounts showed their face value at the time of signing. The cars were listed with their make, model, and year. There was no misrepresentation. And? Harrison wasn't happy with that answer. He asked if you had deliberately withheld information about problems with the assets. I pointed out that in a divorce, neither party is required to provide full disclosure of every potential issue with an asset unless specifically asked. Richard never asked for inspection reports. He never asked about upcoming payments. He never asked about pending litigation. So we're clear? Legally? Absolutely. The settlement is ironclad. Harrison knows it, which is why he was fishing for anything he could use. He has nothing. Patricia paused. Naomi, Richard is falling apart. The word is spreading in legal circles. He's become a cautionary tale about greed in divorce proceedings. I didn't force him to be greedy, Naomi said. I offered to split things fairly at the start. He's the one who insisted on taking everything. I know. And legally, morally, you're completely in the right. I just wanted to give you a heads up that he's looking for options. Let him look. He won't find any. That evening, Naomi picked Julian up from his after-school art program. He bounced into the car, his hands covered in paint, carrying a canvas. Look what I made. He held up a painting of a sunset, all oranges and purples and pinks. Mr. Thornton says I have natural talent. It's beautiful, honey. Naomi carefully placed it in the back seat. We'll hang it in the living room. Can we get pizza tonight? Please? Pizza it is. She drove toward their favorite local spot, a small family-owned place that Julian had discovered on their first week in the new neighborhood. It was nothing fancy, but the pizza was good and the owner always gave Julian extra garlic bread. While they waited for their order, Julian colored on the paper placemat the restaurant provided. Naomi watched him, her heart full. This was what mattered. Not the mansion or the cars or the investment portfolio. Her son, happy and secure, creating art on a paper placemat. Mom? Julian looked up. Is Dad going to visit this weekend? Richard was supposed to have Julian every other weekend, per the custody agreement. But in 3 months he'd canceled 4 times, always with an excuse about work or appointments. I'm not sure, sweetheart. We'll have to see what he says. It's okay if he doesn't, Julian said, going back to his coloring. I like our weekends. We do fun stuff. Naomi felt her chest tighten. Julian was adjusting, but there were moments like these when the loss showed. Not loss of the wealth or the big house, but loss of his father's presence. Her phone buzzed. An email notification from the parenting app. She opened it, knowing already what it would say. Naomi, I need to cancel this weekend with Julian. Something's come up with the business. I'll make it up to him next month. Next month. Always next month. Naomi typed back a simple response. Understood. Julian will be disappointed. She didn't mention that Julian had been looking forward to showing Richard his paintings. She didn't mention that her son had asked 3 times this week if Dad would really come this time. Richard could read between the lines or not. It didn't matter anymore. The pizza arrived, and Julian dug in with the enthusiasm of an 8-year-old who'd had a good day. Naomi took a bite of her own slice and let herself relax. This was her life now. Simple dinners. Art programs. Weekends at the park. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And watching Richard's carefully constructed world fall apart around him? That was just the background noise to the beautiful life she was building. Her phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from a potential client, a major corporation looking for a financial consultant. The contract would be worth $500,000 over a year. Naomi smiled and took another bite of pizza. While Richard scrambled to hold on to assets that were destroying him, she was building something real. Something sustainable. Something that couldn't be taken away because it existed in her skills, her knowledge, her reputation. The unraveling had begun for Richard. But for Naomi? The real construction was just getting started. Naomi's consulting firm, Laurent Financial, had outgrown her home office. 6 months after the divorce, she signed a lease on a small suite in a professional building downtown. It had 3 offices, a conference room, and a reception area. She hired 2 assistants. Lauren, a recent college graduate with a sharp mind for numbers, and Tom, a semi-retired CPA who wanted to stay active in the field. The morning she hung her name on the door, Beverly showed up with a bottle of champagne and flowers. "To the phoenix rising from the ashes," Beverly said, raising the bottle. "Save it for later," Naomi laughed. "I have a client meeting in an hour." "Which client?" "Technova. The startup I told you about? They're ready to move forward with a full financial restructure. It's a 2-year contract." Beverly let out a low whistle. "That's huge." "It's a start." Naomi adjusted a picture frame on her desk, a photo of her and Julian at the park, both of them laughing. "I'm building something real here, Bev. Something that's mine." The client meeting went well. By the end of the day, Naomi had secured 3 new contracts. She was locking up the office when Lauren stopped her. "Miss Laurent? There was a man here earlier asking for you. He didn't have an appointment." "Did he leave a name?" Lauren consulted her notes. "Richard Brooks. He said he was your ex-husband." Naomi's good mood dimmed slightly. "What did you tell him?" "That you were in meetings all day and could only be reached through your business line with a scheduled appointment." He seemed upset. "If he comes back, tell him the same thing. I don't take walk-ins." But Richard didn't come back to the office. Instead, he was waiting by her car when she came out of the building. He looked different than the last time she'd seen him. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by business casual that looked slightly rumpled. He'd lost weight and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Naomi." He stepped toward her. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about, Richard. If this is about Julian, use the parenting app." "It's not about Julian. It's about—" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from their marriage when he was stressed. "I made a mistake." "You made several." Naomi unlocked her car. "Excuse me, I need to pick up our son." "Please." Richard's voice cracked. "Just 5 minutes? That's all I'm asking." Against her better judgment, Naomi stopped. 5 minutes? Talk. "The house has foundation problems. Did you know?" "I had it inspected during our marriage, yes. The reports are on file if you'd looked for them." "The cars had balloon payments coming due. They were leases structured through a business account. The paperwork was available. The investment accounts were margin accounts. Clearly marked as such in the statements." Richard stared at her. "You knew. You knew all of it." "I knew what I'd arranged, yes." Naomi met his eyes without flinching. "You wanted everything, Richard. I gave you everything. Exactly what you asked for. This is fraud." "It's not." Patricia made sure of that. "Every asset was represented accurately. You just never bothered to look beyond the surface value. You saw the big numbers and assumed that's all there was to it." "I'm losing everything," Richard said, and for the first time she heard genuine fear in his voice. "The business is failing. Clients are leaving. The house is unsellable until I fix the foundation, but I can't afford the repairs. The cars are gone. Simone left. I have nothing." "You have exactly what you earned," Naomi said quietly. "You cheated on your wife. You threw away your family. You tried to take everything out of pure greed. These are consequences, Richard. Not fraud. Consequences. I need your help." The audacity of it hit her like a slap. "Excuse me? You're doing well. I can see that. This office, your business. You could help me restructure, help me get back on my feet." Naomi laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You want me to help you? After everything you did? After you tried to leave me with nothing? I'll pay you. Once I'm back on track, I'll pay you whatever you want." "I don't want your money, Richard. I don't want anything from you except for you to be a decent father to Julian. Can you do that? Can you show up for your scheduled weekends instead of canceling? Can you call him on his birthday? Can you be present in his life?" Richard looked away. "This weekend is bad. I have meetings with potential investors. Then we have nothing more to discuss." Naomi opened her car door. "Your 5 minutes are up." "Wait." Richard grabbed her arm, then immediately released it when she tensed. "Naomi, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. For Simone, for the way I treated you, for trying to take everything. I was wrong. Can't we just Can't we try again? Try what again? Our marriage. We were good together once. Naomi studied his face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. All she saw was desperation and calculation. He didn't miss her. He missed her skills. He missed having someone to manage his life, to clean up his messes, to make him look good. No, she said simply. We're done, Richard. We've been done since the moment I found you with Simone. Actually, we were done long before that. I just didn't want to see it. I'll change. I'll be better. For how long? Until you're back on your feet? Until you find someone new. Naomi shook her head. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your second choice. I'm building a life I'm proud of, and you're not part of it. She got in her car and drove away, leaving Richard standing in the parking lot. In her rearview mirror, she saw him pull out his phone, probably calling another potential investor, another possible bailout. He'd never change. He'd never learn. And that wasn't her problem anymore. At Julian's school, she found her son waiting with Mr. Thornton, his art teacher. Julian's face lit up when he saw her. Mom, guess what? I got picked for the art show next month. My sunset painting is going to be displayed. That's wonderful, honey. She hugged him, breathing in the scent of paint and childhood. We'll have to invite everyone we know. Can Dante come? Julian asked, and Naomi felt her heart skip slightly. Dante Rodriguez. She'd met him 2 months ago at the community center where Julian took weekend art classes. He was renovating the building, and they'd started talking one Saturday while waiting for Julian's class to end. He was kind, funny, and had no idea about her past wealth or her ex-husband's downfall. I'm sure Dante would love to come, Naomi said. That evening, after Julian was in bed, Naomi sat on her small balcony with a cup of tea. Her phone rang. Dante's name appeared on the screen. Hey, she answered, unable to keep the smile out of her voice. Hey yourself. Julian told me about the art show. Congratulations, proud mama. He's really talented. I don't know where he gets it from. Maybe he gets his determination from you, Dante said. Speaking of which, I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner this weekend? There's a new Italian place downtown I've been wanting to try. Naomi hesitated. Since the divorce, she'd been focused entirely on Julian and her business. Dating felt like stepping into uncertain territory. Julian will be with his father this weekend, she started, then stopped. Actually, no. Richard canceled again. Julian will be with me. Bring him along, Dante said without missing a beat. I like the kid. We can make it a group thing. No pressure. That's what she liked about Dante. No pressure. No expectations. Just genuine interest in spending time together. Okay, she said. But fair warning, Julian will probably order too much garlic bread. I like him even more now. After they hung up, Naomi sat for a while longer looking at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Richard was probably still scrambling, still trying to find a way to recover everything he'd lost. Let him scramble. Let him learn. Let him face the consequences of his choices. She had her own life to live. A business that was thriving. A son who was flourishing. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something new with someone who valued her for who she was, not what she could provide. The foundation Richard had destroyed was being rebuilt, brick by brick, choice by choice. And this time it was being built on solid ground. The call came at 2 a.m. Naomi almost didn't answer, but something made her check the screen. A known number. She hesitated, then picked up, thinking it might be about Julian. Ms. Laurent? An unfamiliar male voice. This is Officer Davidson with the city police. I'm calling about Richard Brooks. You're listed as his emergency contact. Naomi sat up in bed, her heart racing. What happened? Is he okay? He's fine physically. We picked him up outside the Willow Creek property. He was trying to break in. Break in? It's his house. Not anymore. The bank foreclosed 3 days ago. Mr. Brooks apparently didn't receive the notices. Or ignored them. He's claiming he has a right to be there. Naomi pressed her fingers to her temples. Why are you calling me? You're his emergency contact. We need someone to come get him. He's not under arrest, but he can't stay here. And he seems disoriented. We're divorced. I'm not his emergency contact anymore. According to our records, you are. Look, ma'am, I understand this is complicated. But the man needs help. Can you come down here or not? Naomi looked at her clock. 2:17 a.m. Julian was asleep in the next room. I have my son here. I can't leave him alone. Is there anyone else we can call? She thought about it. Richard's business partner had cut ties with him months ago. His golf buddies had disappeared when the money dried up. Simone was long gone. He had no one. "Give me an hour," she finally said. "I'll make arrangements." She called Beverly, who arrived within 30 minutes to stay with Julian. Then Naomi drove to the Willow Creek house, a place she'd never wanted to see again. Richard was sitting on the curb, looking small and defeated. 2 police cars were parked in the driveway, lights off. Officer Davidson approached her car. "He's not drunk or under the influence," the officer explained. "Just desperate. Says he needed to get some belongings from inside. I explained that he'll need to coordinate with the bank, but he's not hearing it." Naomi got out of the car and walked toward Richard. He looked up and she barely recognized him. This wasn't the confident, arrogant man who demanded everything in the divorce. This was someone who'd been completely broken. "Naomi." His voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't know who else they could call." "How did this happen, Richard? How did you lose the house?" "I couldn't make the mortgage payments. After the foundation issues came to light, I couldn't sell it. I tried to refinance, but my credit is destroyed. The bank sent notices, but He trailed off. "I thought I could turn things around. I thought I had more time." "Where have you been living?" "A motel. The Sunset Inn off Highway 9. He laughed bitterly. "Remember when we used to drive past that place and joke about who would ever stay there? The Sunset Inn was a run-down pay-by-the-week place where people went when they had nowhere else to go." Naomi felt something twist in her chest, but it wasn't sympathy. It was a kind of sad vindication. This was what greed had bought him. "What about your business?" "Gone. I had to file for bankruptcy last month. All my clients left. Turns out when you lose your credibility, you lose everything." He looked at her. "You knew this would happen, didn't you? You planned it." "I planned to protect myself," Naomi said. "You planned to take everything from me. We both succeeded. I'm sorry." The words came out broken. "I'm so sorry for all of it. For Simone, for trying to destroy you, for being such a terrible father to Julian. I've lost everything and I deserve it. I know I deserve it." Officer Davidson cleared his throat. "Ma'am, can you take him somewhere? We'd rather not have to arrest him for trespassing." Naomi looked at Richard, really looked at him. This man had betrayed her, tried to leave her with nothing, abandoned his son. He deserved everything that had happened to him. But standing here at 3 a.m., watching him sit broken on the curb of a house he'd lost, she felt nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just a deep, profound tiredness. "Get in the car," she said. Richard stood shakily. "Where are we going?" "I'm taking you to a hotel. A decent one. I'll pay for 3 nights. That gives you time to figure out your next steps." "Naomi, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm doing this for Julian. Because you're his father, and he deserves better than having a father who's homeless." They drove in silence to a mid-range hotel near the highway. Naomi paid for 3 nights in cash, got Richard a room key and handed it to him in the parking lot. "This is it," she said. "This is the only help you're getting from me. Use these 3 days to find a job, find an apartment, find something. Because after this, you're on your own." "Thank you." Richard's voice cracked. "I know I don't deserve it." "You don't. But Julian deserves a father who's stable enough to see him on weekends. Get yourself together, Richard." "Not for me. For him." She drove home as the sky started to lighten. Beverly was asleep on the couch and Julian was still in his bed, undisturbed by the drama. Naomi stood in his doorway for a long moment, watching him sleep, reminding herself why she'd driven out in the middle of the night for a man who'd tried to destroy her. Not for Richard. Never for Richard. But for this little boy who deserved to have 2 parents, even if one of them was fundamentally flawed. The next morning, over coffee with Beverly, Naomi recounted the night's events. "You're a better person than I am," Beverly said. "I would have left him on that curb." "I thought about it," Naomi admitted. "But what would that accomplish? He's already destroyed. Leaving him there wouldn't make me feel better. It would just make Julian's father a cautionary tale." "He already is a cautionary tale." "Then let it be a tale about consequences, not about cruelty." Naomi sipped her coffee. "Richard made his choices. He's living with them. But I'm not going to add to his suffering just for the satisfaction of it. That's not who I want to be." Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. "Still on for dinner tonight? Julian's been texting me about this art show. Kids got me excited to see it." Naomi smiled. This was her life now. Not the drama of Richard's downfall, but the simple joy of planning dinner with someone who made her laugh. Someone who liked her son. Someone who had no idea about her past and didn't care. I need to go, she told Beverly. I have a client meeting at 10, and then Julian has his art class this afternoon. Living your best life while Richard crashes and burns, Beverly observed. It's poetic. It's justice, Naomi corrected. He wanted everything. He got it. Now he knows what everything really costs. She left Beverly to finish her coffee and headed to her office. Laurent Financial was thriving. She had more clients than she could handle and was considering hiring another full-time consultant. Her bank account grew each month. Her reputation in the industry was solid and growing. Richard had tried to take everything from her. Instead, he'd forced her to build something better, stronger, more real than anything they'd had together. And as for Richard himself? He'd gotten exactly what he deserved. A 3-night stay in a mid-range hotel, paid for by the ex-wife he'd tried to destroy, a temporary respite before facing a future he'd built through greed and betrayal. Naomi hoped he learned from it. But mostly she just hoped he'd show up for Julian's art show. Because at the end of the day, that's all that really mattered. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just a little boy who wanted his father to see his painting. The art show was on a Saturday afternoon in the community center's main hall. Julian's sunset painting hung in a place of honor near the entrance, his name printed neatly on a card below it. Julian Brooks, age 8. Naomi arrived early to help set up, wearing a bright green dress that made her feel confident and free. Dante was already there, hanging a banner with some of the other volunteers. Hey, he called when he saw her. Your kid's painting has the best spot in the house. Because it's the best painting, Naomi said, only half joking. She was proud of Julian in a way that had nothing to do with competition and everything to do with watching him discover something he loved. Beverly arrived next, bringing Julian with her. He'd spent the night at her place so Naomi could help with setup. The moment Julian saw his painting displayed, his face lit up. It looks so different here, he said, awed. Like a real artist made it. A real artist did make it, Naomi told him. You did. People started filtering in. Other parents, kids from Julian's class, teachers, community members. Naomi watched Julian give an impromptu tour of his painting to anyone who would listen, explaining his color choices and technique with the seriousness of a seasoned professional. She was pouring punch when Patricia Morrison arrived, looking around the room with interest. This is lovely, Patricia said. Which one is Julian's? Naomi pointed to the sunset painting. That one. He's very proud of it. He should be. It's beautiful. Patricia accepted a cup of punch. Can we talk for a minute? Somewhere private. They stepped into a side room and Patricia's expression turned serious. I got a call from Harrison Blake yesterday. He wanted to meet. About what? About writing a case study. Apparently, what happened with your divorce has become something of a legend in legal circles. He wants to use it as an example in a seminar he's teaching on asset evaluation in divorce proceedings. Naomi blinked. A legend? You separated liabilities from assets so cleanly that it's being studied as a masterclass in legal strategy. Harrison was furious at first, of course, but now he's impressed. Grudgingly impressed, but still. What did you tell him? That I'd ask you. The case study would be anonymized, of course. No real names. But the strategy would be detailed. Naomi thought about it. What's the lesson? That greed blinds people to reality. That you should always look beyond surface value. That understanding finance is more valuable than owning assets. Patricia smiled. Harrison actually said, and I quote, she played the long game while my client played checkers. He called Richard his client even though the case is over? Professional courtesy. But between you and me, Harrison has stopped taking cases from people like Richard. Clients who want everything out of spite rather than fairness. He said this case taught him that those clients usually end up destroying themselves. Through the doorway, Naomi could see Julian showing Dante his painting, both of them laughing at something. This was her real victory. Not Richard's downfall. Not being studied in legal seminars. Her son thriving. Her life rebuilt. Her future bright. Tell Harrison he can use the case, Naomi said. If it helps one person understand that fairness matters more than winning, it's worth it. Patricia left, and Naomi returned to the main hall. Mr. Thornton, Julian's art teacher, approached her. Your son has real talent, he said. Have you thought about private lessons? I know an excellent instructor who works with gifted young artists. I'll definitely look into it. Naomi made a mental note. Private art lessons. Another thing she could afford now, not because she'd taken it from Richard, but because she'd earned it herself. The afternoon was nearly over when Richard appeared in the doorway. He looked better than he had a few weeks ago. Clean, dressed in clothes that fit, freshly shaved. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on Julian's painting. Julian saw him at the same time. "Dad." He ran over, excited. "You came. You really came. I wouldn't miss it, buddy." Richard hugged him, and for a moment, Naomi saw a flash of the man she'd married. The man before the greed and the affairs and the betrayal. "Your painting is incredible. Come see it up close. I'll tell you how I made it." Julian dragged Richard to the painting, talking a mile a minute. Richard listened, really listened, asking questions and admiring the work. Naomi felt a small measure of relief. Maybe he was finally learning what mattered. Dante appeared at her elbow. "That's your ex." "That's him. He seems different than I imagined." "He's broken," Naomi said simply. "Sometimes that's what it takes for people to change." After the show, as people were leaving, Richard approached her. "Thank you for the hotel. I got a job. Nothing fancy, just sales at a tech company. But it's steady work. I found an apartment too. Small, but it's mine." "That's good, Richard. I'm glad you're getting back on your feet. I want to start seeing Julian regularly. Actual scheduled weekends. No more cancellations." "He'd like that." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "I also wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not the desperate kind I did before. I was wrong. About everything. I let greed and ego destroy the best things in my life. You didn't deserve any of it. Julian didn't deserve it. No, we didn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. But I want you to know that I understand now. What you did with the assets and the divorce, it wasn't cruel. It was justice. You gave me exactly what I asked for, and I was too blind to see what I was really getting." Naomi studied his face. He meant it, she realized. He'd finally truly understood. "I hope you've learned from it," she said. "Not just about finances, but about what actually matters in life." "I'm trying." Richard glanced back at Julian, who was showing Dante how to mix colors on a palette. "He's happy. I can see that. You've built a good life for him." "I've built a good life for us," Naomi corrected. "And you can be part of it, Richard. Not as my husband, not as my responsibility, but as Julian's father. If you can be consistent. If you can show up." "I will. I promise." He left a few minutes later, and Dante returned to Naomi's side. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay," Naomi said. "I think Richard might actually figure things out eventually. And if he doesn't? Then that's his problem, not mine." She smiled at Dante. "Want to help me take Julian for ice cream? He's earned it." "Absolutely." They left the community center together, Julian between them, chattering about his painting and already planning his next piece. Naomi felt a profound sense of peace. The truth of what had happened in her divorce was spreading in legal circles, becoming a teaching moment. Richard was finally facing his consequences and maybe, possibly, learning from them. And she was building something real with people who valued her. The revenge had been sweet. But this life she was living now was sweeter. And that, Naomi thought as she listened to Julian's laughter, was the real victory. 3 months after the art show, Laurent Financial moved to a larger office space. Naomi had hired 3 more consultants and was turning away clients. Her reputation had grown beyond the local market. Companies from across the state were seeking her expertise. On a Tuesday morning, she received a call from Gerald Peterson, CEO of Peterson & Associates, one of the largest financial firms in the region. "Ms. Laurent, I've been following your work," he said. "I'm impressed. Very impressed. I'd like to discuss a potential partnership." "What kind of partnership?" "A merger. Peterson & Associates would acquire Laurent Financial, but you'd maintain complete creative control. We'd provide resources, infrastructure, and access to Fortune 500 clients. In return, we'd get your expertise and your growing reputation. I'm not looking to sell my company. I'm not asking you to sell. I'm asking you to grow. Think about it, Ms. Laurent. With our backing, you could expand beyond consulting into investment management, corporate restructuring, maybe even acquisitions. Your company would keep its name, its culture. You'd just have the resources to do more. I'll need to see the numbers. I'll have my team send over a proposal. Take your time. Review it. If you're interested, we'll talk." After he hung up, Naomi sat in her office staring at the phone. A merger with Peterson & Associates would make her one of the most powerful financial consultants in the state. The money would be substantial. The opportunities endless. But it would also mean change. Growth. Risk. She was still thinking about it that evening when Dante came over for dinner. They'd been seeing each other regularly for 4 months now, and Julian adored him. Tonight, Dante was teaching Julian how to build a birdhouse while Naomi made pasta. "You're quiet," Dante observed when Julian ran off to get more nails. "Something on your mind?" She told him about Peterson's offer. Dante listened, asking thoughtful questions, never once offering unsolicited advice. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to keep things as they are. Small, manageable mine. But another part thinks about what I could accomplish with those kinds of resources." "Those are both good reasons," Dante said. "Either choice is valid. You're not going to tell me what you think I should do? It's not my company. It's yours. You built it from nothing. You know what's best for it." That's what she loved about Dante. He respected her autonomy. Richard had always tried to make decisions for her, assuming he knew better. Dante trusted her to know her own mind. Julian returned with a handful of nails, and they went back to the birdhouse. Naomi watched them work, Dante patiently explaining each step, Julian concentrating with his tongue between his teeth. This was her life now. Quiet evenings. Good people. Simple joys. The proposal from Peterson and Associates arrived the next day. Naomi spent a week reviewing it, running numbers, consulting with Patricia and her team. The offer was generous. Fair. It would make her wealthy beyond anything she'd had with Richard, and she'd earn every penny. She called Gerald Peterson on Friday afternoon. "I've reviewed your proposal," she said. "I'm interested. But I have conditions." "Name them." "Lauron Financial maintains its independence. My current team stays intact with guaranteed positions. I have final say on all strategic decisions. And I want an equity stake that reflects my contribution, not just a buyout." There was a pause. Then, "Agreed. Let's set up a meeting with our lawyers." The merger took 3 months to finalize. By the time the contracts were signed, Lauron Financial had become a subsidiary of Peterson and Associates, but with autonomy that most acquisitions never received. Naomi's personal net worth had increased to 8 figures. She was featured in business magazines, invited to speak at conferences, recognized as one of the most innovative financial minds in the region. But the thing that mattered most happened on a random Thursday evening. Dante had stayed late to help Julian with a school project. After Julian went to bed, they sat on Naomi's balcony with glasses of wine, watching the city lights. "I have something to ask you," Dante said, and Naomi's heart skipped. "Okay. I'm renovating my house. Been working on it for 2 years now. It's almost done." He turned to look at her. "I was thinking maybe you and Julian would want to see it. Maybe think about whether it could be your house too." Naomi's breath caught. "Dante, are you?" "I'm asking if you'd consider a future with me. Not right now. I know it's too soon. But someday. When you're ready. I love you, Naomi. I love Julian. I want to build a life with both of you." She looked at this man who'd come into her life when she least expected it. Who'd never asked about her past wealth or her divorce drama. Who loved her for exactly who she was, not who she could be for him. "I'd like to see the house," she said softly. "And yes, someday. When we're both ready. I'd like to build that life with you too." He kissed her, gentle and sure, and Naomi felt something settle in her chest. This was real. Not the performance of her marriage to Richard. Not the appearance of perfection. But genuine, honest connection. The next weekend, Richard picked up Julian for his scheduled visit. He'd been consistent for months now, never missing a weekend, always on time. He'd even started contributing more to Julian's expenses, beyond the court-ordered minimum. "Thank you," he said to Naomi as Julian grabbed his overnight bag. "For the hotel, for pushing me to be better, for not giving up on me being Julian's dad." "I didn't do it for you," Naomi said. "I did it for him." "I know. But still. Thank you." After they left, Naomi stood in her apartment, now filled with photos and art and life. Her phone buzzed with a message from Beverly. "Dinner tomorrow? I want to hear about the merger." Another message from Patricia. "Congratulations on the Peterson deal. You've earned it." And one from Dante. "Can't wait to show you the house. And the future." Naomi smiled and set down her phone. This was her new beginning. Built on her own skills. Earned through her own work. Shared with people who valued her. Richard had tried to take everything. Instead, he'd freed her to build something better. Something real. Something that couldn't be signed away in a divorce settlement because it existed in her talent, her determination, her capacity to love and be loved. The old Naomi would have been afraid of this much change. But the new Naomi embraced it. Change meant growth. Growth meant life. And life, she was discovering, was pretty wonderful when you built it on your own terms. The call came on a Wednesday morning, 10 months after the divorce was finalized. Naomi was in a meeting with her team when her phone rang with a number she'd blocked months ago. Richard had found a new number to reach her. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway. "This better be about Julian," she said by way of greeting. "It is. Sort of." Richard's voice was hesitant. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you face to face." "We have nothing to discuss face to face. If it's about Julian, use the app." "Please, Naomi. It's important. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him for coffee at a neutral location. She arrived to find Richard already there, looking better than he had in months. The job was clearly working out. He'd put on some healthy weight and the desperate edge was gone from his eyes. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat down. "You have 1 hour. Talk." Richard took a deep breath. "I've been in therapy. 6 months now. My therapist suggested I needed to have an honest conversation with you. Not for me but for Julian." "What about Julian?" "He asked me last weekend why we got divorced. I gave him the standard answer that sometimes adults stop getting along. But he's smart, Naomi. He knew there was more to it. And I realized that someday he's going to want the whole truth. So tell him the truth. That you cheated. That you were greedy. That you tried to take everything from his mother. I will when he's old enough to understand." Richard looked down at his coffee. "But that's not why I wanted to meet. I wanted to tell you something and I wanted to say it to your face." "What?" "You were right. About everything. The house, the cars, the investments. You didn't trick me. You didn't lie. You simply let me be greedy and I took the bait. I spent months being angry at you, thinking you'd committed fraud. But my therapist helped me understand that you just gave me exactly what I asked for. I know I did. And it destroyed me. Lost everything. The business, the house, Simone, my reputation. I hit bottom so hard I thought I'd never recover." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "But you know what? It was the best thing that ever happened to me." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "How do you figure?" "Because it forced me to face who I'd become. A man who valued things over people. Who treated you like property instead of a partner. Who ignored his own son in favor of appearances and wealth. I was empty, Naomi. The big house and the fancy cars were just decorations on an empty life. And now I have a 1-bedroom apartment and a used car. I work 45 hours a week at a regular job. I see Julian every other weekend and actually spend time with him instead of parking him in front of a TV. I'm in therapy. I'm making real friends, not business contacts. I'm building a life that means something." Naomi sipped her coffee, processing this. "I'm glad you're doing better, Richard." "Really? But why did you need to tell me this?" "Because I wanted you to know that I'm not coming back. I'm not going to try to reconcile. I'm not going to ask for your help with anything. I'm not going to make this weird for Julian by hoping for something that's never going to happen." "Good. And I wanted to apologize. Not the desperate apology of a man who's lost everything, but a real apology from someone who understands what he did wrong. I betrayed you. I tried to destroy you financially. I was a terrible husband and a worse father. And I'm sorry. You deserved better. You always deserved better." Naomi felt something release in her chest, a tension she didn't know she'd been carrying. "Thank you. I appreciate that. I heard about your merger with Peterson and Associates. Congratulations. You've built something amazing." "I have. And I heard you're seeing someone. The contractor who works at Julian's art center. Dante." "Yes, we're together." "Is he good to Julian?" "Very good. He's kind, patient, present. Everything a father figure should be." Richard flinched slightly at that but nodded. "I'm glad. Julian deserves that. And so do you." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Richard pulled out an envelope. "What's that?" Naomi asked. "Money. $15,000. It's everything I've saved over the past 6 months. I want you to put it in a college fund for Julian. I know it's not much, but it's a start. I'm going to add to it every month. By the time he's 18, it should cover at least part of his education." Naomi took the envelope, surprised. "Richard, you don't have to." "I want to. I'm his father. I should contribute more than the court-ordered minimum. You've carried the financial burden for him since the divorce. Let me help." "Okay. I'll set up a 529 account. You can contribute to it directly." "Thank you." Richard stood up. "I should go. I just wanted you to know that I'm doing better and I'm going to keep doing better. For Julian. For myself. And because you showed me what real strength looks like. He left before Naomi could respond. She sat there for a long time, staring at the envelope, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief that Richard was finally taking responsibility. Satisfaction that her revenge had led to genuine change. And a kind of peace that came from true closure. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. How did it go? She told him about the meeting beforehand. No secrets between them. Better than expected, she typed back. Tell you about it tonight. Love you. Love you too. Naomi left the coffee shop and headed back to her office. Lauron Financial was in the middle of a major expansion, and she had 3 client meetings that afternoon. Her real life, her earned life, was waiting. But as she drove, she thought about Richard's transformation. The divorce hadn't just freed her. It had, in a twisted way, freed him too. From the pressure to maintain appearances. From the emptiness of chasing wealth for its own sake. From the person he'd become. She hoped he'd continue on this path. For Julian's sake, if nothing else. But whether he did or not, it wasn't her responsibility anymore. She'd given him what he asked for and he'd learned from it. That was more than she'd expected. The final confrontation had come and gone, not with anger or recrimination, but with honesty and acceptance. Richard understood what he'd done. He understood what she'd done. And most importantly, he understood why. That was all Naomi needed. The rest was just moving forward into the life she'd built, one choice at a time, one day at a time, with people who valued her and a future that belonged entirely to her. The confrontation was over. The healing could truly begin. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Naomi stood in Dante's newly renovated house, helping him hang pictures. The house was beautiful, filled with light and character. Dante had spent 3 years working on it and it showed in every detail. What do you think? He asked, stepping back to assess a framed photograph of the 3 of them at Julian's latest art show. Perfect, Naomi said, and she meant it. Julian ran through the living room, chasing Dante's dog, a rescue mutt named Picasso. The sound of his laughter filled the space, making it feel like home. Mom, can we paint my room blue like at the apartment? This is Dante's house, honey. We're just visiting. Actually, Dante said, pulling Naomi aside. I was thinking it could be your house too. If you wanted. She looked at him, this man who'd come into her life when she was rebuilding herself. Who'd never asked for anything except her time and her heart. Who loved her son as if he were his own. Are you sure? She asked. That's a big step. I've never been more sure of anything. You, me, Julian, Picasso. We're already a family. Why not make it official by sharing a home? Naomi thought about her apartment, the place where she'd rebuilt her life. It was full of memories of starting over, of finding her strength. But this house, with Dante and Julian and even the ridiculous dog, this felt like the future. Let's do it, she said. But I'm keeping my apartment for my office. Lauron Financial is still growing and I need the space. Whatever you need. Dante kissed her forehead. I'm just happy you said yes. 2 months later they moved in. Naomi kept her apartment converted into a second office space for her growing team. Julian painted his new room bright blue and filled it with his artwork. Picasso claimed the couch. And slowly, steadily they built a life together. Richard continued to be consistent with his visits. He'd even started coming to Julian's art shows, sitting quietly in the back, never trying to insert himself into Naomi's new life. He contributed to Julian's college fund every month without fail. He was becoming, slowly, the father Julian deserved. One Saturday when Richard came to pick up Julian, he met Dante for the first time. Naomi watched nervously as the 2 men shook hands. I've heard a lot about you, Richard said. Julian talks about you constantly. He's a great kid, Dante replied. You should be proud. I am. And I'm grateful he has you in his life. It could have been awkward. It should have been awkward. But both men seemed to understand their roles, and they were choosing to be adults about it. For Julian's sake. After Richard and Julian left, Naomi found Dante in his workshop, sanding a piece of furniture he was building. That went well, she said. He seems different than you described. Better. He is better. Losing everything forced him to find what actually mattered. Do you ever regret it? Dante asked. The way the divorce went down? Naomi thought about it. No. Richard tried to destroy me. I simply let him destroy himself. He needed to hit bottom to rebuild himself properly. If I'd fought for half the assets, he would have felt victimized. This way he got exactly what he asked for and had to face the consequences. You're kind of brilliant, you know that? I'm thorough, she corrected, smiling. 6 months later, Loran Financial merged with Peterson and Associates, was generating revenue that exceeded even Naomi's projections. She'd been invited to speak at national conferences. Business schools were asking to interview her about her approach to financial consulting. She was featured in a major business magazine under the headline, "From Divorce to Dynasty, How Naomi Loran Built an Empire." The article detailed her journey from giving up her career to support her husband, to rebuilding after divorce, to creating one of the fastest-growing financial firms in the state. It didn't mention the specifics of how the divorce had played out, but it highlighted her resilience, her strategic thinking, and her commitment to ethical business practices. Richard sent her a text when the article came out, "Proud of you. You deserve all of it." She didn't respond, but she appreciated the sentiment. Richard was part of her past, a chapter that had closed. She wished him well, hoped he continued to grow, but he wasn't part of her present or her future. Her present was Loran Financial, Julian's thriving art career. He'd been accepted into a prestigious youth art program. And Dante. Her future was the same, just more of it. On a bright Saturday in spring, Dante proposed. Not with a grand gesture or an expensive ring, but quietly in their backyard, while Julian painted and Picasso chased butterflies. "Marry me," he said simply. "Build this life with me officially. Let me be Julian's stepfather. Let's be a family on paper like we already are in reality." Naomi said yes without hesitation. This was different from her first marriage. Built on honesty instead of appearances. On genuine love instead of convenience. On partnership instead of dependence. They planned a small wedding, just close friends and family. Julian would be the ring bearer. Beverly would be maid of honor. Patricia would attend, along with Naomi's team from Loran Financial and Dante's crew from his contracting business. Richard would not be invited. They agreed on that. He'd moved on with his life, and this was Naomi's new beginning. But Julian would tell him about it and Richard would be happy for them. He'd proven that much over the past year. The wedding was beautiful and simple. Naomi wore a dress the color of sunrise, bright and hopeful. Julian carried the rings with solemn importance. Dante's vows made her cry happy tears. Her own vows promised partnership, honesty and love. At the reception, Beverly raised a glass in a toast. To Naomi, who showed us all that the best revenge is living well. Who turned devastation into opportunity. Who built an empire while raising an amazing kid. Who found real love after fake marriage. To new beginnings and happy endings. Everyone cheered. Naomi looked around at the faces of people who loved her, who'd supported her, who'd watched her rebuild her life from nothing into something extraordinary. Later that evening, after the guests had left and Julian was asleep upstairs, Naomi and Dante sat on their back porch under the stars. "Do you ever think about the what-ifs?" Dante asked. "What if Richard hadn't cheated? What if you'd fought for the assets? What if you'd never started your consulting business?" "Sometimes," Naomi admitted. "But then I realized that every what-if would have led to a different life. Maybe a safer life. Maybe even a comfortable life. But not this life. Not this happiness. No regrets. None. Richard took everything in the divorce. Or he thought he did. But what he really took was the weight of a failed marriage, the burden of maintaining appearances, and the hollow satisfaction of surface-level success. What he left me was freedom. Just the chance to become who I was always meant to be." She leaned against Dante's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the reality of this life they'd built. "He thought he was taking everything," she continued, "but he was actually giving me everything. He just didn't know it." The final irony of her revenge was that it wasn't about Richard at all. It had never been about making him suffer or watching him fall. It had been about using his greed as a catalyst for her own transformation. He'd demanded everything, and in giving it to him, she'd freed herself to build something better. Richard had wanted the house with the broken foundation, the cars with hidden payments, the investments with buried debt. She'd let him have them all, knowing that appearances meant more to him than reality. And while he'd struggled with the consequences of his greed, she'd built Loran Financial. She'd raised Julian. She'd fallen in love with a good man. She'd created a life based on substance instead of surface, on earning instead of inheriting, on real wealth instead of the appearance of it. The divorce had come full circle. Richard had asked for everything and gotten it. Naomi had given him everything and gotten free. They both ended up exactly where they deserved to be. And as she sat there under the stars with her new husband, in the home they'd built together, with her sleeping son upstairs and her thriving business and her genuine happiness, Naomi understood the final truth. The best revenge wasn't taking everything from Richard. It was building a life so full and real and joyful that what he'd taken didn't matter anymore. He'd won the divorce by getting everything he asked for. She'd won her life by becoming everything she was meant to be. And that, in the end, was the sweetest victory of all.